خناخ كأي يخصتيني تلقت يوهان ياكي أتكي خناخوي أياودتي يا كيلجا أو كاتو قدت يا تنتكيني أو خناخ أوي وي أخجا أو وخيخ يوخ أقا يا يدت هشواسا أوتي تلايتاكو ستنتتكيتس أتلين شكون قا جاكوتا يجني داكهيتي يا خيتشو تنهسي خهاتي يا يدت قا قنيا نخرين يلتكتري دليد سيو داكنستان يا يدت جايكو جينك يا أوه يا خانا أختوسكو يا ها فوجي يجني يدات وجي نيوكاكتل آتي يا سندي قاقو just play the hin وش كنخ to the art مجرى أختوسكو يستين ياتا قلتل أختوسكو قلت يستين أختوسكو يستيني قا أتكيس آخي أقا أوي كاكتو شهيد كاكتو ني كاكتو ني أستو يرغتنجي يا دعا يا أخ كاك كاك تاك أكو دخ أوي يدو ساك إطلاق أخسكو دلنجت ساي إيفا يدو ساكن يا دعا جايكو غينك كاسي يه بي يقتزكي أت أختوسكو يستيني كدين أتيس آخي الشيش
واسئت وساق
وسائيتي
تحصى
وسائيتي
وسائيتي
سوزي خدوساو وسايد وساو
جيمي ياخد وساق
وسايتي جيمي
كاش واسا سوسي
Oh جيمي جيمي قيادة شكيشيان
تاتي سوا أهو وسائيتي يتخي جيمي ياخد وساق
Ḳutí أول سوزي خدوساو Wasayi duwasak.
Wasayi duwasak.
Wasayi yati. Shad kayahat.
Ḳukahaa.
Oh, Jimmy, shtakat aya wushkun rehajiti.
Wasayi yate akhunche. Wasayi yate.
Tléixʼ wasa. Tléixʼ wasa. Tléixʼ wasa.
Jimmy ye khatuwasak.
Achek yisach at yatki. Suzy ye khatuwasak.
Ḳukahaa.
Kak ayahat.
Khatuwakak Susie.
ख़ुकाhaa awe. Ahu, shad ayahat.
Wushkun rehajiti.
Ayakakwe at yatki. Tute ye yigachtisatin. Kayade yuniski Jimmy. Kayade shakisyan.
Tsutsaye yigakhtusatin akhunche.
Tute ye yigachtisatin akhunki.
Wasayi tu shtakatiwa. Tléixʼ tiene que weta. Yitwakesagu yukhayishatki. Let's reflect.
Awesome.
What just happened?
Well, at first, it looked like some early Chucky movie. I was just waiting for it to get real bloody.
I try to warn you, it's a little bit strange at the beginning.
But it was good. Like, I liked the conversational. Like, it was, yeah. Yeah, what is your name? What is your name? How are you? I'm okay. And then they got in the part for the Yetki. They were the children. I guess of the person outside talking to them. And then they said, one said I'm a female, one said I'm a male, and then they were friends, the Ḵukahaa, and yeah.
I think that like when they originally recorded this, they must have done it with like film or something, and whatever they recorded it with captured like the thing where the audio is kind of slightly degraded, so it changes pitch and makes it a little bit more.
Little, yeah, the D10 kind of.
And then
thing is look.
when they start like dancing, it's like really violent looking at first.
I know. It's like she's doing.
It's like, okay.
it looks a little.
So this was made in 1969.
And I was about 6 years old when it was made, so it was perfect for me when I was that age.
Yeah, it's kind of on par for like, I think late 60s, early 70s kids television, which was,
Yeah.
I don't know, everybody must have been doing something back then. So, but maybe it's just the way things were.
Yeah, we didn't have CGI, so.
Yeah, you got to do a lot of lighting effects and different things. There's 9 more of these, and there's a lot less of an introduction. So this one's sort of, it's a really awesome project when you think about it. So there's an archivist named Zach Jones who used to work at Alaska Heritage Institute, and he should get a ton of credit for a few like really amazing things. One was making sure that we knew what kinds of stuff was out there in Tlingit. So he and Jim Samard, who was an archivist with the State of Alaska Library, they had kind of come across these 10 videos. And they wanted to make sure that I knew about them. And I was like, oh, I'm bringing these right into class because they're so kind of creepy and just fun. And so I didn't tell any students, and they were like, should I be terrified? And another one said, I feel like I'm taking acid or something. And so we had a lot of fun. And but both Zach Jones and Jim Samar, they want to make sure that these were available. So they put them on the internet. I downloaded them so that we can work with the audio and the video. And so if you're going to work with these things in ELAN, which is what we're going to do today, you've got to download a video and then you have to find a way to separate the audio file. I think there are some advanced ELAN users who can get it to do everything with just a single video file. But if you have a video, you also need to have a WAV file. And it has to be a 16-bit audio file. If it goes higher than that, then the ELAN program for some reason can't fully recognize it. You can hear it, but you can't see those WAV files, which are really helpful.
Does it have to be specifically WAV? Like
It does.
It can't
Like
be
MP3 won't work, or OGG or anything like that. So it has to be a WAV file.
Curious about that. The video, was it originally made in Tlingit? It wasn't made in English and dubbed.
I think they made this soundtrack. I don't know the history of the thing. I do know it's part of the Juneau Indian Studies program, but it was also like through Southeast Alaska. And there's a number of entities. So Sitka Native Education Program, which is called SNAP, and then Juneau Native Education Program, or I think it's called, I can't remember the exact title now. But those are two really important entities going back to making stuff like this so that we can learn from it still today, however many years later, right? And so the other thing was the Bilingual Association, I think it was called, through the state of Alaska Department of Education. And they created a whole bunch of these little booklets. And so what it seems like they had was basically recorded the puppets, made the sound. So whatever this creepy little sound box is, like, I just imagine that little guy from who's got the circles on his face from this whatever horror movies that he was in. He's there with like the music box. It's got to be like Chucky or something, right? But so there's the music and the puppets, and then the script. And so I think the script was in English, and then was given to speakers of Lingít, Ḥukahaa, and Smalgich. And so there were 10 videos made in Tlingit, and then in Haida, and then in Tsimshian. I think the Tsimshian videos still exist. I'm not sure about the Haida ones. I've seen, but they all had a booklet and the recording, however that was made available. And then they were digitized at some point, but I think I only have a couple of the Tlingit workbooks. But we don't really need the workbooks because these are really great exercises to learn how to write Tlingit and to translate it. And so we're going to do some of this in advanced Tlingit next week because they've been doing some very challenging Tlingit transcription and translation work. So any other thoughts or reflections, questions? I talked about a bunch of stuff before I showed the video too.
I thought like I said, I thought the learning medium was really good, like simplistic, but really good, because especially if you don't have someone to converse with, I mean, beyond the translating and the using the ELAN, you kind of get involved in the conversation. So it's almost like you're tempted to talk, and you get the kind of talking back and forth in real time, which you don't really get anywhere else. Like you get sometimes elders talking, or you get in books where it's a one-sided or two-sided, but not in real time. And no, I love that medium. And even if people would overdub traditional things that are real, a simplistic English cartoon, which kids I think learned a lot of growing up on weekends. We watch these real simplistic cartoons, like when you're, just a young kid.
Scooby-Doo.
Overdub it in Clinket, and I think you'd learn a lot faster.
Yeah, what? Yeah.
Where's the ELAN program posted?
So if you do an internet search for ELAN software, it'll bring you there. So, and I'll show you, we'll just walk through what that would look like. So here's, if I just enter into an internet search engine, ELAN software, I end up with the language archive, right? So that's usually the first entry, ELAN, and then software. And so then if I click it, that gets me to this page eventually, which talks about an annotation tool. And there's quite a bit of information on here. But usually I just go straight for the download. And there might be some things on resources on how to use this thing. And it kind of depends on what you're working with here. So if you're working in Windows, you have ELAN or simple ELAN. If you're working in Mac, you have ELAN. If you have a Mac that has their own, the Apple chip in it, you want to do the M1 and then simple, and then, you know, Linux. And so I'm usually working in this one. And so that's how you sort of get started. And if you're going to work in ELAN, one of the things that you really sort of ought to do is, let's see. So this is my ELAN folder. And I just want you folks to see, because if you're going to do this work, there's a couple things that you need to know. One is you have to keep track of everything, or else you're going to lose time and data. So what I tend to do is I create a name for every situation or speaker, right? So here's Norman James, here's Cyril George, here's George Davis, here's Sophie Smarch, here's Mary Anderson, right? And so within there, like Sam Johnston, we'll look at Sam Johnston, I would have them now recorded by what the thing was, or I mean organized. So this is Sam Johnston, who's a speaker from Teslin. Here's a Duck Kuwaiti story, here's a Loon story, here's a Ḳukahaa story, and here's a Thunderbird story. So within there, I would have the video file, I would have an audio file, and then I would have a number of different things. This EAF file is what the thing is. That's your ELAN file. But the biggest thing is keep it organized, keep the ELAN file, the video file, and the audio file in the same folder. And try not to, like here I have one, looks like I've got two different versions of this, probably because I was showing people it, but try and keep it clean, try and keep it organized so you don't lose track of stuff. And then there's also this template, which is really important, which was developed by Mallory Story.
Should I get the simple one or the normal one?
It depends on how much space you have on your computer. If you've got enough space, the full one is probably a little bit better. I haven't worked with the simple one before though, so I don't know exactly what the difference is.
I tried the simple one. I didn't like it so much, so I uninstalled it and reinstalled the bigger one.
Okay, yeah, so it sounds like the bigger one is probably the one we want to go with.
Dang, it's downloading at 100 kilobytes a second.
Oh,
It's like, it's taken a long time for some reason.
yeah, it's sometimes takes a little while. So when we were watching this, I was making annotations down at the bottom here. And so if we want, what we're going to do now is go into annotation mode, and we'll start with, I think it's the first one. That's right. Okay. So the way I think we should approach this is I want to give everyone a little bit of time to think about what they're hearing. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to the phrase a few times. And then I would like you to, what I think I want us to try is everybody write it in the chat. And then just do your best. And we're just going to see how it turns out. But don't hit the enter button. Just type it in the chat and we'll listen to it a few times. And then I'll say Tléixʼ Aa Gook and hit enter. And then a whole bunch of entries should pop up in the chat.
Should I write it on my computer and say it out loud, or should I load Zoom?
You could log on to the meeting, but just don't connect the sound.
I'll connect the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or questions before we get started?
I need to load the Zoom thing real quick.
Okay. So while that Zoom is loading, for advanced Tlingit, I'm going to start with episode 5 probably. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them write down what they're hearing and translate it and then respond to the speaker. Because there's usually like question and answer back and forth. So they're going to have some practice engaging in dialogue with a puppet. Johnny and Eva Marks are the voice actors. They are wonderful speakers of Tlingit. And so even in this short video, I'm guessing we're going to get a couple new phrases, even though like combined, there's probably 10 lines in this, not a whole lot. Maybe 20.
I've got the thing loaded.
Okay, so here we go.
Wasa ito wasak. Wasa ito wasak. Wasa ito wasak. Wasa ito wasak.
So I want you to do your best. Type this phrase that you're hearing, just the Tlingit, into the chat. And then in 10 seconds, I'll ask you to push the enter button. Cook. Okay. Yeah, okay. So let me create a little bit of room here. So wasa. And it might be a little bit more like that. And so there's a really interesting question that comes up when you do this kind of work. There's a whole bunch of interesting questions. One of them is, do you write it like you're hearing it? Or do you standardize it? And there's going to be some times where that's not always an easy answer. For example, I think we're hearing someone on a recording saying Ḳukahaa, but we would say Ḥukahaa. But that speaker, he has a bit of a W after any underline X to an A vowel. Like I would predict he'd have one probably almost every time. And so we just wrote it as Ḥukahaa so that people could recognize it. But then somebody in class asked me, like, who are you to make that decision? So, I don't know. I would just, but a lot of it depends on what's your intention. For this, we're just practicing. All we're doing is practicing. And so before we go too much further, we'll go to the next phrase. How would we translate this? What do you think? What do you folks think?
What is your name?
What is your name?
What are you called?
What do you call? What's another way we might translate it?
How are you called?
How are you called?
Yeah, how are you called? And what is your name is absolutely fun. And what is your name? What are you called? The only reason I lean towards how are you called is so we're sort of capturing what's going on with the grammar. But there's a couple different instances in Tlingit where a how question would translate to a what question in English, right? So another one would be wasa atune. Does anyone know what that translates to? Wasa atune.
What's
Where are you going?
What were you
What are you
going?
doing?
What are you doing would be da sa ye da ine or wasa.
Where are you going?
What did you do?
Where did you
There's no you in it.
What was done?
Very close. What was done is very close. What happened?
Oh,
And it's an interesting, but it's an interesting construction, right? Because the grammar doesn't line up and sort of you have a how, then atune, something happened. How something happened. How did something happen? Which I guess is a what question in English. Okay. So then we got a whole bunch of music, and luckily we have marked where the phrases are, so we can just go to the next one. And you hold down the Alt key. I'm not sure what the key would be. I'm not sure if the keyboards match up exactly. On a Mac, you would hold down the, oh, it's the Option key. Sorry, the Option key. And that allows you to move this thing around. So I can move it way over there, I can move it over there. I can also drag the endpoints. So I can say, oh, okay, this one goes to here, and then this one goes over here. And so you could do a little bit of fine tuning with your segments and where they start and stop. So this one, I think, let's just listen to this whole thing. So we'll listen to it 4 times, and then you'll write it in the chat, so hold on. Count to 10, and then y'all will hit the enter button. Hey. I'm gonna make this, and so there's two main controls on here for being able to look at it. So the zoom is basically how much are you zooming in on the timeline. Like, so if you have a segment that's like this, if you want to make it bigger, you increase the zoom. And then the other portion is the font size. So you want to get this right so that you can, the font is tall enough, but then the segment is long enough that the whole thing fits in there. But we'll also look at the subtitles up here, and we'll turn them on, and we can select the font up here to 36.
Are we getting that menu to pop up? Is that holding the Alt key?
It's a right click.
Right click, okay.
It's a right click, yeah. Thanks for asking.
Is that arrow on the video player that has a 1 next to it, it says skip to next frame?
This one?
Oh, the one with the 1 next to it. Yeah, that one.
Set time 1 second ahead. I don't know. Okay, so how are we going to translate wasa'iyati?
What are you doing?
Hour.
Dasa. 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 Dasa.
Count to 10, write in the chat, then hit enter on 10. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. And
A good question. I keep hearing the wa as a low tone every time they say it,
like you say wasa'iyati.
because the stuff sounds higher than the rest of it.
It does.
Yes, so even though we mark high tone and low tone, there's also tone within the tone, which we don't usually mark. Like in English, you don't mark stress, right? So English has 2 things. So English has stress in a word, right? So like when you say, if you're composing children's books and you want to get a certain rhythm to your words, or if you're composing music or some poetry that's maybe more lyrical, then you're paying attention to whether it goes like da, 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 right? So this is the summer of, right? So we're hitting these these stress marks, but then there's also and we don't mark that in English. You don't mark stress in English. And you also don't mark primary stresses. So like primary stress, like, so you've got Jimmy and Susie, right? So you could say, I saw Jimmy and Susie in the park. So there, the primary stress is on like probably I, but I could say, I saw Jimmy and Susie in the park. Now there's a different meaning, right? Or if I say, what on earth are you doing here? So now the stress is on you, which is a little bit different than what on earth are you doing here? So like that adjusts the meaning. And the same thing happens in Tlingit, but I don't think we've studied it really intensely. But even though we mark high tone and low tone, there's going to be variance even within those.
So Tlingit does the same thing with the stress.
Yeah. But then as far as we haven't really studied why. It's probably meaning and context. There's a whole bunch of stuff that it probably communicates. Okay, how are we going to translate dasa?
What?
What with question mark?
Yeah.
Oh,
And so that is how you respond. Like if someone says my name, I might say dasa. Like what? Or if someone says something I couldn't hear it, dasa.
so
Wasa iati.
That's a repeat. We're going to get quite a few of these.
Wasaiate.
So like thinking of a children's program, whoops. This is effective because they just keep asking the same thing, right? Getting it back and forth, back and forth. It's going to be a pattern. Then I think they dance around, or they next,
Ring around the rosy.
right?
Suzie khatu sao. Suzie khatu sao. Suzie khatu sao. Suzie khatu sao.
Count to 10. Write it in the chat. Press enter. Good. Oh, the dilemma. How are we going to spell Susie?
Susie Ḳukahaa.
I don't know. I have to look at the script. But yeah, we do have a yay. Which is interesting, right? Like these are high fluency speakers. I would expect a you do a sock right there. Why would you have you and yay? What's the difference?
yay. You. Is there a difference?
There is a difference.
Is it a word order thing?
Yes.
It's a word order.
Yes. How specific?
If the, oh gosh, what part of speech is it? If the preverb is next to the verb itself, it would be you. And if you've got something between them, then it's yay.
Well, yeah. So basically, if you're going to say name verb, then it's going to be you. If anything separates them, or if the name goes to the other side, then it should be yay. So like I would say, but if I was telling some sort of story about how I got my name, I might say, that is why I am named. I'm called Ḥukahaa.
So the name after it makes it yay?
Yeah. Well, no. Yes. So basically, let's make a note here. And my guess is it's simplified for children's television. Like, let's not hit them with all the variation, you know. And so you would basically, oops. So if you have the name, you have you, Ḥut, oops. And then if you had the name somewhere else, you have Ye Ḥut do a sa. Oops. And then, but it doesn't have to go right there. It could go if something separates it, like Ḥuné. It'd be kind of weird to have, let's say the name, and then put a bunch of information there, and then have Ye do a sock. So it's more commonly it just comes kind of after. And so this is like as stated as follows. And it's a pretty, this is one of those things that I think we're in danger of losing track of. That's probably worth holding on to, because you'll see it with you yawaka and ye yawaka when they say this thing. So whether the quote comes immediately before the verb or if it comes after the verb. Back to our fine friends here. How are we going to translate that?
Susie is how I'm called.
Or if we wanted to simplify it for children, we would say, my name is Susie.
Yeah, you could say my name is Susie. I am called Susie, right? I'm going to spell it different. This is the Tlingit spelling, it's the English spell. Yeah. Okay.
Wasa ye do a sock.
Again, pattern, 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 right? This is very effective. They probably are saying E do a saw,
Wasa ye do a sock.
but I'm going to put it do a saw.
I heard wasa ye do a song.
Wasa ye do a sock. Wasa ye do a sock.
Yeah, because she's asking him.
Jimmy ye Ḥutí.
So,
Wasa ye do a sock.
yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like this. But again, we're just going to keep it at that because we know that's what.
And I
That's
think
what
when you go from S to E sound like that, it kind of sounds like a Y sometime too. Like it was say, like you're not trying to say Y, but like just the S to the E kind of sounds like that too.
Yeah, and you're going to see like Tlingit starts to panic when you start putting vowels too close to each other. Like Hawaiian, it's just like, oh, just run those vowels together. It's fine. It's like it almost becomes a whole new word. Tlingit's like, no. Auto stop, give it a Y, make it a whole new vowel. You got to do something.
Oh, no.
Jimmy ye Ḥutí a sock.
And so this is, again,
What is this video called?
this is, okay. So since we were talking about spelling, this video is called Let's Learn Language. And then I think the whole series like is called, I don't think they have it on here. It is called Let's Learn Clincket, which I do think is spelled Clinket. So if you're looking for this video, you have to spell Tlingit in the worst way. Just try and think of the worst way you could spell.
See, that reminds me when I was in sixth, I saw it spelled with Klink.
Yeah, there's really
Oh, it's even
all
worse.
over the place.
That's how it's meant to be.
Yeah, let's see what comes next.
Wasa ye ti Jimmy.
Right, so we've already done this one. We're gonna try and get to video 2. We'll see if we can do.
Cash wasa Susie. Cash wasa Susie. Cash wasa Susie. Cash wasa Susie.
Jinkat de kakwastu aga interkakgiltad.
Spooksy.
Okay. How can I translate that?
Not bad.
Susie.
Wasa. Wasa.
Eshwasa.
Wasa. Oh wait, yeah.
So,
So I'm gonna
That would
give,
be more along the lines, I'm okay, or something, wouldn't it?
I would say this. So,
Okay, Susie.
right, and so this is really interesting, right? Because how do people talk, right? Because if someone says, "Hey, how you doing?" Okay, right? You don't need a pronoun in English there. If someone's not going to say, "Wait, what's okay? Is everything okay?" Right? They'll just say, "Oh, you're okay," right? And same with this. So again, I want to take a moment to talk about this. So this kleshwasa, what would the full sentence form be to say I am okay?
I think you're broadcasting not that.
Oh, whoops. It's that's the opening line for my season 2 of my podcast.
What is what?
I thought it was oddly shaped.
Not how is.
Yeti, maybe.
Say it again.
That's what's Yeti.
The chet part is correct.
Would
Last
there be a yay in there somewhere?
Not a yay.
You?
All I need is the verb.
City.
That's a T.
T. Is it a T verb? Is it some conjugation of T?
Yes, it's the negative version of yati.
Ah, chat.
Oh,
Uti.
Yes.
Ufti. Ah, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Okay. It was on like the sheet that they used to hand out on beginning Clincket.
So here is, this would be the complete sentence. There's a couple things I want to point out here. Is one is you can just say the short version. And the other thing is, like, this is another phrase that just sort of breaks the rules of meaning and grammar. Saying when you put these words in this order, it doesn't matter what they mean individually. This means okay, not hurt. And I think I used to teach this as like, so, not bad, but it's really like, I'm okay. But a lot of it depends on context, right? So if we're hiking and it was rainy, and I thought it'd be funny to jump up on some log and I slipped and fell, I might yell out, and I'm communicating that I'm not hurt. And you can use future. This is actually a really powerful phrase when we say keshwasa uti. Now, the literal interpretation would be, that is not how it is. But this is a case, again, where the cultural meaning overrides what's going on with those individual words. This is a really good phrase for forgiveness. Like, so if somebody, let's say we're all sitting around telling jokes and I go too far with a joke and I can see I hurt your feelings, I might say, so I might say, forgive me, I love you, I don't want you to feel sad. And if you say Tléixʼ is over. Like from the Tlingit perspective. But if you didn't say that, that doesn't, but that means like, we just killed it. And from the perspective of Tlingit problem solving, this phrase takes care of a lot of stuff, but both sides have to be okay. Right? So someone once made fun of me at a very bad time. And I was very hurt. And the next time, and they knew it, and the next time they saw me, we had this big encounter. There was tears, there was apologies, there was all kinds of stuff. And I just said, "Ķetvasāvoti." And I never brought it up again. So that's the thing too, is if you're going to do this Tlingit way of being, that means you do the Tlingit way of being. It doesn't mean you say, okay, that'll be okay. But then, next time we get together, I make some sort of catty comment about it, right? It doesn't work that way.
What's
What's that?
Sorry. Well, what's the Ishachit? Please forgive me. How do you write? Please forgive me. Not okay.
No. And so you could also say things like this. It will be okay. And you could say, and then you can also say things like this. And these last ones are pretty important because this is how you begin. This you ask permission, right? So let's say it was Donut Friday at Copa, or if it was Ramen Thursday at Zarelda's. And let's just stick with the donut. And you got this delicious looking donut. And you came over and I said, Heshke wasapati Ḳukahaa. Would you okay if I eat that? And you'll probably say, like, what a Ḥukahaa. No, but maybe you have half of it, right? But this is how you ask permission for things. Can I sing this song? Can I come and see you? Can I, is it okay if I have some coffee? It's okay, it's really just sort of asking, would it be okay if? And so it's an important phrase to sort of learn, and you can use this whole trick of tying two things together, right? Which we talked about a little bit. So for example, here's two phrases. You say Tléixʼ Aa. Would it be okay? So those are two different phrases. We just went over the top one. What is the top one? It's right there. Would it be okay? It's the bottom. Anybody know that phrase?
I stand.
Come to your place.
Yeah, I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to come see you. I'm going to come by you. So to tie them together, do that. Would it be okay if I came to see you? Okay. Back to Susie and Jim. For that one. They're dancing.
Oh, Jimmy.
Okay. Well, that's Jim. Okay, that's not really a thing. I'm deleting that one as well. She just calls his attention to something.
She likes dancing.
Jimmy, Kayade Shakishan.
This might be our first complicated phrase.
Jimmy, Kayade Shakishan. Jimmy, Kayade Shakishan. Jimmy, Kayade Shakishan. Jimmy, Kayade Shakishan. Jimmy, Kayade Shakishan.
So whatever you think you're hearing, be bold in your predictions. Jinkate kakwastu aka enter. I come up with a word for enter, I guess. Or it's return? Is it return? These are old typewriter lingo. I don't know. It says return. Return. Ḳuhtí kakkikladan. Good. Okay. Okay. So we get Jimmy. I think there are 3 words here.
Jimmy, kayade shakishan.
Okay. What's the first? The first word
Yeah.
is
Oh. Ha.
ah. The second word
Yeah.
is this.
Yeah.
I believe third one. Set.
Yeah.
Jimmy, kayade shakishan.
Yeah.
The N is a little hard to hear, perhaps. And so let's see. Let's go see if we could find it by looking up Yang. We'll start with the verb dictionary. Go to Y, down. There's Sha, Ka, Sh, Yen. So here we have wag a tail, wave a hand, twirl, spin round above one's head. Any of those seem like they fit?
Third one.
The third one. Let's try the second one. Let's try wave. Oina Ahyade Ashakashyen. Ashakashyen. And then I want us to, let's see. There's this other document which I want to see. Have we, let me go to the beginning of this thing. Look at this, then we'll take our break. Have we looked at, where'd it go? Have we looked at this in here? Okay, so this is the reformatting of the retype of Jeff Lear's verb notes, which are wonderful. And so we're going to look at Ye, and there's Yen. It's waving it, shaking it back and forth. So you have Akshayen, Akshayen, Akaushayen, Ashakaushayen. Waved it, shook it back and forth, twirled it, wagged it. Could also be to literally shake a bunch of people, and then we move into a different verb. So this is our verb. This shows us a perfective, and I could tell it's a 0 conjugation verb. In the command form, I could also tell it's a 0 conjugation. It's a little bit surprising to me that we have Yixian, which means the classifier has gone plus D. But what would Káyáde be? Anybody know?
Around people?
Well, it's people, but what is ya? So I think we did this one a while ago. So we'll revisit it because I think we went through it pretty fast. So here's a list of bases and suffixes. And this is one that, well, there's 2 that we really need to learn. There's ka and ya, because they're all over the place in Tlingit. Ka is on, or the horizontal surface. Ya is the face or the vertical surface. And so that is what you have here, Káyáde, towards the face faces of the people. So Tlingit is really interesting because what she's saying here, and so what is she saying?
Turn to face the people,
Well, we got to have the verb in there.
the audience.
That would be
Turn
Ḥustu.
around.
There's no turning though. What is the verb doing?
Waving.
Waving.
Waving or
Wave to the
twirling.
people. Wave to the people.
And it's interesting because for Tlingit, like it's like shake your hand at their faces. That probably signals to us this wasn't something we did a whole lot long time ago. Because it's very descriptive, right? Because like, yeah, that's what you're doing. You're doing that to towards someone's face. And so I don't know what we did, like just to maybe there was something like I have to ask some of the old people. But so that's our first we get pretty far into this video before we hit something that's a little bit complicated. So let's say it in a slightly different way pretty soon. But that's why these are so fun, because they give us like a few new phrases. It moves at a pretty decent speed. But even like videos for kids, like it's impossible to do Tlingit without it getting complicated. And but that's okay. That's okay, because now from here you could talk about a dog wagging their tail, and you can talk about finger wagging like this. Because over the summer we had a language gathering and had some fun, and I tried to get I got a pretty complicated phrase, which I think was Tléixʼ Aa There. That's probably one of the most complicated verbs that I could think of, just in terms of the amount of stuff that's built in there. What on earth might that be saying?
You're always shaking your finger. Or
Shake
don't always shake your finger.
And then if we start with shish
Don't
and we end with k.
don't shake your finger at my face. Towards my face.
Yep. So if someone's like that to you, now you know what to say. Now you know what to say. If someone goes like that, you're like, okay, you better sit down for about a solid minute while I say this phrase. Okay, take 5, folks. We'll come back and we'll finish this video and chat a little bit. Cheesh. Okay. We're going to keep working on this. And then we'll stop. Well, after we finish the first video, which I don't think it'll take us too long, because I think there's a repeat of a bunch of phrases. We got to talk about our final assignment for this class, because it's a little close. Let me make sure I'm sharing the audio. So here's the next phrase. In katika kwastu tuasaguwe Ḳukahaa.
Type I tone I.
Okay, so hold on. If you cannot type capital letters, here's what I want you to do. is use all lowercase letters and make the high tone the capital letter. Okay. Hit enter if you're done. Here's what he said. Dot yes so and how would we translate dot yes so
Or something,
or yeah
or that. What is dot?
About.
let's see. You find
That would be like around this place, wouldn't it?
this.
Da.
Okay, so let me find thing here. In the beginning Tlingit workbook, there's this illustration, which has gone through a bunch of renditions. So this is like version 10.0 or something. So this is how you ask questions, right? So you have the question particle plus sa, which is a command form of the verb to name something. And then often ya, he, we, or you. But that part is not necessarily mandatory. Sometimes it just sounds better. But we heard someone say dasa, right? And we have da pasa, wasa, wasawe, adusawe, those types of things. Why is the T in parentheses there?
Maybe because it sometimes happens. Depends.
Sometimes happens. When would it happen?
One is before yes.
If it's at a place.
Good predictions. But here's da and here's sa. Now that we've seen that, we'll go back to our class notes. Our right here. So for example, we have some, we heard him say dasa, which is like, what? And then you could say dasa ituwasagu. How would I translate that?
What would you like?
What do you want?
And dasa icha.
So
What are you eating? What do you eat?
it's
Okay. So we have, this is a statement. I'll just say chet. Sounds weird to say. And how would I translate that?
Need water.
And if I wanted to say that as a question, what would that question sound like?
Inge itinach iati.
This
That one is actually asking something a little different. What is that one? How would we translate that one?
do you need water?
Because ge is the yes or no question marker. If I want to say, what do you need?
Dasawai itinachiati.
We have da,
asa iti nachiyati.
and we have sa. And we're going to have iyati. But the itinach will go right here. And because something comes in between da and sa, the T will appear. That's the secret, right? Dat iti nechsa iyeti.
Oh yeah, the vowels don't like to be next to each other, right?
Well, it's just something about, it's more just like, if something's there, then the T has to appear. It's just probably more of a meaning thing than a sound thing. But this is what is going to happen. And it's not like you have a whole bunch of what questions where something does pop up there, but it does happen. So you could say, dat yanach sa. It's a little bit more of an advanced, well, this is a riddle.
Yanach sa.
I think it does have riddles sometimes, which is dat yanach sa katutatsin hayukatangi. And that translates as what is more precious or valuable, I guess we'll say. Coming back to here, we know that yes is 4. So if you say dot, yes, sa.
Is dot just a combination of like the word for what with the T?
No, it's just, I would say dot is what, but then the T falls off when you just have dasa.
That would be like what for, which would probably be more colloquially translated as why.
Yeah.
Or how come?
Right. And so like, because you could say wanachsaya, which would be a straight why question. But coming back, it's like wave to the people. What for?
What for?
Which is that's a pretty solid answer, Jimmy.
Aho, wasiyete. Aho, wasiyete.
We're going to skip this little particle at the beginning. We're just going to focus on the parts that have the most meaning for us right now.
Wasiyete.
So there's one. I'm going to do 3 more.
Wasiyete.
And katika kwastu. First word is wa. Second word is sa.
Yeti.
There's yeti.
Saw yeti.
What's the last word?
Yetki? Children? Yet. Yet.
That might be 2. I don't know if I'm spelling those 2 words. Yeah, I guess that's the last one. Do we know what adyetki are?
Children?
Yes, children. So how are you all? The other thing when you do translation work like this is you're going to have decisions to make on what do you do when you get to the English. Because sometimes you might be doing things like you'll say, wa, sa, yi, yeti, adyetki. How are you all children? And so you might rearrange the words when you get it into English, but it kind of depends what's your what's the purpose? What are you doing it for? Are you publishing something? Are you putting subtitles onto something? Are you working for an English-speaking audience? Are you working for Tlingit language learners? Is it just for practice? In this case, it's just for practice, so we're just going to move along. It's just something to think about. It's translation and interpretation, right?
Jimmy ياخد وثاق.
Okay, so again, we got to repeat.
Ḳukahaa awel Susie ياخد وثاق. Ḳukahaa awel Susie ياخد وثاق. Ḳukahaa awel Susie ياخد وثاق. Ḳukahaa awel Susie ياخد وثاق.
What is the first part there?
Ḳukahaa.
Ḳukahaa. How am I going to spell that?
Underline X, high tone AT. KU, model stop AA.
Ḳukahaa awel Susie ياخد وثاق.
How are we going to translate?
And I.
You and
I'm called Susie.
So here, the Ḳukahaa, you're going to have an independent pronoun before that. So those are the only ones that have the high tone. So you have Wa'eqaa, ख़utqaa, Ḥuqaa, Hasqaa, Uhanqaa, Yuhanqaa. And that's what you're going to have. And what this is doing is it's shifting. It's, in this case, it's a subject shift, right? That's all it really does is subject shift in this case. And subject meaning who we're talking about.
Wasayi do withak. Wasayi do withak. Wasayi do withak. Wasayi do withak.
Just looking for the pronoun.
we meant to post the last one.
No, it's okay.
Sounds like she's saying ye this time.
I agree.
How is your called? How are you called? You all called.
وسيد وثاق.
So repeat.
So you do a song.
Again, if we wanted to write, what are all your names? That's totally fine, I think. Oops.
Wasayeti. 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 Wasayeti.
Jose. Yay.
It does
Sounds like yay, but I feel like it's supposed to be ye.
It's supposed to be ye.
I'm gonna agree with all of that. It does sound like yay.
Wasayeti.
Sayeti.
So wasayeti would be how is it? But I think we're getting wasayeti. How are you?
I think she's slurring the E and the yeti.
Right. I think it's yeti. Yeti.
Shad kayakhat. Shad kayakhat. Shad kayakhat. Shad kayakhat.
Jen kate kakwastu akakte kapilatan. Oop. First word. Second word. Cut. Third word. What's that first word?
Art.
We're gonna translate. Did we do this one in here?
Female? Is it female?
Okay, I feel like we did this in the other.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a little woman.
I feel like it's probably girl at some age, but I don't know what all that would be.
We did talk about it, but I don't remember it either.
I get this one. I always get this one. Okay.
Art. Yeah. What?
That one.
Start. That's the.
You're gonna hear him say this one, which is, but we'll stick with this one. And then
What? What? What?
so with these last ones, okay.
So
So these are life phases. And what is tokani as far as life phase?
is that baby?
Is baby. So for me, I think it's not walking around yet. It's not walking around, it's tokani. Because it means the literal interpretation is like uses the cradle board. So then we get to shatkyatsku, which is also shatkatsku, and yadakwatsu. What kind of life stages do you folks think those two are?
Were those the teenagers?
Not quite.
Is the one after that like child?
I suspect one of them would be like a toddler.
Yeah, well, it's kind of toddler phase. And so literally, I think you're looking at something like this.
Listen.
I don't know if that's the right word either. But basic,
Pubescent?
yeah, prepubescent, right? So,
It's more like a tween.
well, this covers toddling up to puberty. Once you hit
Okay.
puberty, you are now in this next phase. So I don't know how to say that in English, right? But that's just how
Maybe pre-puberty.
Is that how you do it?
Prepubescent, but pre-puberty works too.
Is that how you do
Yeah.
I think that's it.
it? Okay. Shark, duck.
This would then be a teenager. Adolescent.
And it kind of depends, right? Some people are 9 when they start cycling, and it just kind of depends. So like,
Post-pubescent.
right?
It's like
So
that
this
kid in
is
my 4th
where
grade class.
you wouldn't want them to, but they could make a baby. Like that's for me is like what the difference is, right? And so we're into cycles, we're into like pubic hair, we're into the wiry hair phases, right? So yeah, so we could take this and we could just say post. And then this,
Like
It's a young woman.
Oh,
So what is the dividing line between the shat and the yishawat?
Probably this might be the end of the latter phases of the teenage years up through their sort of 20s, right? So basically, like in English, when we talk about someone being a young adult, because I think we still have we give them a lot of, flexibility in terms of what we are expecting from them. But it kind of depends too. Like some people have some pretty rough upbringings, or pretty strict upbringings, I should just say. But basically, they're not fully grown yet. I think they're still in the emotional growth phases, probably. But maybe they might be near or done growing. But then there's some people, like I know there was some basketball player who went pro, and I think he entered college at he was 6 feet tall, and then he played 2 years of college basketball, and then in his third year he grew like 9 inches, right? So it was like, that's pretty uncommon to hit a growth spurt at like 20 years old, but it can happen. So I think here you're mostly done growing, but you're still growing emotionally, I think. And then you get into, and that leaves us with the final category.
old woman.
Old woman, and the last one's me.
Sean, right? And so Shawat Sean, Aka Sean. But that's kind of what we've got for all of these things. So when they say Sean or Yaduk, it's also a life phase thing. These are the two that are commonly used for, like, to say my boyfriend or my girlfriend. You could say Ach Yaduku, Ach Shatki.
Did you say Sean?
You could say Ishan Kashan, say Ishan Shawat Sean.
But could you say like put as in the pronoun for you in front of it, and then Sean for like you old?
Oh no, you'd say well, some kind of mean language teacher might have taught the children to sing this at the end of the happy birthday song. Ya Indishan. You're getting old, right? So you would use a verb for that. This wouldn't work well. This works well for nouns, but people are a bit more complicated than nouns. And so you can't really say Ihshan. But you could also say Ishan Yandashan. It's hard getting old. I heard that from the old people. And there was one time I was working with an elder. I won't name this elder, but his wife's sister came over, and she walked up to us and she said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he said, "Wasawe Shawat Shan." And she said, "What does that mean?" And without really, I was just being an interpreter. I said, "What's up, old lady?" And boy, did she glare at me. And I said, "I'm just the translator." And so people do tease, but also just be cautious, because if you're a young person teasing old people, don't be surprised if you start getting the look. Okay. I am a girl. We'll just sort of leave it at that. It's complicated, like, but now we know those life phases. Those are important, right? So he uses a little bit of a different. So this is what does he say?
I am a little person.
Little man.
I'm a little man.
That's what he says. And so he could say Yaduk, because Yaduk would be the appropriate life phase to match. But this is also, like, we heard that Cyril George speech, I think, last week, where he said, "Ḳukahaa, ḳukahaa." So when a baby is born and you want to ask, like, is that a little man? And so that's how you could ask, is the baby male? And you could also, you do the same thing, but it could be as well that shot and then ḳaq are also kind of equivalents, but yuduck is something I probably hear more commonly. I think this is just music.
Oh, Jimmy, Ḥukahaa.
Yeah, no. Let me just stretch this one out.
Ḥukahaa wushun vehat. Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite. Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite. Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite. Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite. Ḥukahaa wushun vehat. Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite. Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite. Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite.
What are you folks hearing?
Ḳutí wushgun vehatite.
Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite.
Something about school, maybe.
Ḳutí whoosh.
Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite.
Unzi.
Ḥukahaa wushun vehatite.
The Ḳutí whoosh hun has hadziti. What do you think is going on here?
Oh, whoosh is each other.
Yes.
Cut is
Hot
all.
us.
Well, yeah, so two, well, verbing each other, right? Verbing one another, verbing each other. When you have whoosh right before the verb, is to verb each other.
Unk is friend, isn't it? This is
He
saying
is
we're all,
generally a be verb.
Mhm.
this is saying we are all each other's friends.
Yes. All of us are friends, right? So that's a very short way to do it in English, right? And so what you have, the cut, you could say the cut uhan whoosh hun ich adziti. And so there's the reason why it goes from city to ziti is because we are friends to each other. So we are becoming subjects and objects, even though there's no subject in this verb, which is kind of interesting. But it's like we're all friends to each other. So it's this reciprocal thing here. When you have whoosh before a verb, it will push that classifier plus D, because they say we are this to each other. And so even though it's a being verb, it's a state verb, it's an object and transitive verb, it's still going to have that plus D going. We are friends. So if you want to do something to each other, that's a little bit more similar grammatically in English as what's going on with the Tlingit. Okay, they gave us our second sneaky one. Let's see what they say next. So we have this part already. And what does he end it with?
Okay.
Wasi te ahonke.
And like, listen, like when he says ख़ukahaa, it's not ख़ukahaa. It runs, they run together.
Wasi te ahonke.
ख़ukahaa.
Is there a way to slow down the audio in this?
There sure is. So on the top right, we have controls. Under controls, we have rate, and we can drag that to like 60.
Wasi te ahonke.
And there's a couple of things, like it does not, you know, like the real old school way to do this would be to put your finger on the record, right? And then it slows the record down. But what that tends to do is, like if it says wasa so it drops the tone down. So what this does is it slices little tiny pieces of time, I guess, and it sort of stretches it without affecting the tone. But if you turn it down to like 10, it gets pretty hard, I think, to understand.
I think there's a sweet spot in there.
Right. So I tend to not go below 50. Like 80 is, you can, it still sounds not too different.
Wasi te ahonke.
What about 200?
Well, there's no reason to speed up Tlingit. There's,
Wasi te ahonke.
I mean, unless you're trying to do the pro version, but like there are speakers who speak that fast or pretty close to it. And so we'll work our way up to them. They're speaking at a nice pace here, but sometimes it's good to slow it down. And we're just practicing here. But if you do this work on your own, and I'll tell you this, I think we're talking about like complicated recordings, like that Cyril George speech we listened to, like stories and stuff. If someone asked me how many people could listen to this recording, write down the Tlingit, and then write down the English, I would probably say fewer than 10. So doing this type of work is a step-by-step process as we sort of engage with everything we've been learning about Tlingit, with all these little pieces and parts and the verbs, and we keep going back to the verbs, and we'll go back to the verbs again. As we start to look at whole language and watch it come at us full speed, like this is really good practice for us. And then it also helps us to see what does Tlingit sound like when speakers like put it all together. And as we learn all of these little parts, this is the work I think that helps us to see how those parts fit together. Because there's not very many high fluency speakers of Tlingit left. There's also fewer than 10 of those. And so to try and add to them is you've got to put in time with stuff like this. But some of the things you're going to need is you're going to need time and space. You're going to need to be fed and hydrated. And if you drink coffee or whatever your thing is to get your kind of energy up, do that kind of thing. You're also going to need to take breaks now and then. You can only do it for a certain amount of time as you're getting started. I think you got to have good headphones. And I think you got to also not be distracted. And so it's a challenge to find all of those things. But there's probably 1,000 hours of recorded Tlingit. And of that 1,000 hours, I would be surprised if 50 hours have been transcribed and translated. So more than 95% of the recorded Tlingit has not been transcribed and translated yet. So there's a lot of work out there to do. There's a lot more for us to learn. And these are really good starting points, even though they still lead us to questions, but it's great. It's a great starting point.
Wasi te.
Again, repetition.
Tléixʼ Aa.
Right. And so again, like they're giving very short versions of things, which is okay, right?
Tléixʼ Aa.
And repeating.
Actual sound like not bad.
I mean, okay. Yeah. I would say it means okay and not harmed.
Tléixʼ Aa.
Jimmy Ĥatowasak.
Achek Yisach at Yatki.
That's a new one. We're gonna skip the last one, just in the interest of time.
Achek Yisach at Yatki. Achek Yisach at Yatki. Achek Yisach at Yatki. Achek Yisach at Yatki.
Four words, I would say. Put them in the chat if you're ready. Okay.
Achek Yisach at Yatki.
Ach is the first one.
Yeah.
8 is the second word. Yisa'ach is the third word. At Yetki is the fourth. And that gets an exclamation point. So this also might be something, has anybody heard this before? Achit Yisa'ach.
I've heard that. The introduction.
Okay. Let's go take a look at the ach verb. So in this, we're going to go to the verb database. We're going to go up to ach in the verb database. And we're going to grab this first one. And we're going to look through for something that has a in front of it and an S classifier. So we go down. Here's noun, 8, subject, S classifier, ach. For the subject to listen to, obey, give heed to the noun. Duchet yisa'ach. And we find it there, right? So this is, the database contains what we feel are the most commonly used verbs. Conjugated already for you in a number of different ways. This isn't conjugated for every single person combination, but you're going to learn how to do that. If you go down here and you say, okay, well, if this is duchet wasa'ach, I am listening to them, what you will learn how to do is to be able to say, take something like that and say, oops, I got to go under the Yishan Yandashan. So this is I'm listening to them. So then you're going to be able to say wutu, and then you're going to be able to say yisa, and then you're going to be able to say ise, and then ause, and then ause, and then do ze. So if this was I am listening to them, what do you think this one is?
We are listening to them.
We are listening to them. And this one?
They are listening.
You are listening to them.
This one?
They all are
You all
listening.
are
Y'all.
All. This one?
They all
They are listening to them.
Singular there.
One person.
And this one?
They all are listening.
They.
Oh. And this one?
People.
People are listening to them.
Bring it.
Yes, for the fourth person.
Fourth.
So you could say people are listening to them, but as far as like
Or they are being listened to, maybe?
how I would translate it is they are being listened to.
Is that fourth person?
That's a fourth person. Duh. That pushes it to go dudze. So you're going to learn how to do this so that once you look up a verb, you're like, oh yeah, I could change these. yise, ause. Because if we just take those verbs themselves, right? Like I'm gonna get rid of this 8 stuff on all of these. And this will take us to the end of class. There's no class on Thursday. We got a week off. And let me finish this and then okay. So all these say, watch this. I guess what's a team? I see them. And now I could say, oh, let's change all of this to team. We see them. You see them. Y'all saw them, whichever one. They saw them. They all saw them. And they were seen. Right? So we can start changing the verb root and the patterns are staying the same. Right? And so we could take different verbs, like I'm trying to think about I guess. So now I watch them. Shatin. Butushatin. Yishatin. Yishatin. Aushatin. Hasaushatin. In this case, Wadutlatin. But what you're gonna see is the patterns can only change so much, right? And so we just did 3 totally different verbs and the prefixes didn't change a whole lot. Because if we look at this one, khwase, those ones are identical. All of those prefixes are identical. When you go and take a close look at these, I post the notes. These are the exact same, except the S changes to an L.
Is that a classifier?
That's the classifier. So because the classifier changes, what changes in this case is a single letter.
Is the L the thing that makes it like not good? Like people don't like it?
It's the SH.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. So since you have 7 days, did I give you folks something to work on? Oh, you're working on the Cyril George speech. So keep working on that Cyril George speech. So we did some stuff with this puppet video just to show you like, here's a little bit more simplistic language just to practice with. So I want you to spend this week and see what you can do with that Cyril George speech. You've got the answers there. Try not to go find them, but just like see how much of that recording you can get done and see if you understand all of the words that are in that recording.
So for that, should I download the video and put it into ELAN?
Yeah, so when you download the video, like the most important thing, so you have ELAN if you want to use it. You could use other things. You don't have to use ELAN. You can just use like an audio player and hit play and then just scroll around if ELAN is getting if it's too much for you or if you just don't want to deal with it. But but ELAN does make it quite a bit easier. And so the most important thing is you download ELAN, you set up on your computer, and when you download both the audio and the video files, create a folder and save that. So there's 3 things. There's the WAV file, the video file, and the EAF file. Just make sure wherever those are saved, they're in the same spot. If that's in your download folder, it'll find where the audio and video are. But if you start doing a whole bunch of ELAN translation projects, just make sure you're practicing good file management, because I don't want you to spend 20 hours on something and then lose it because you opened the wrong version of it. So. And so the final is a 1-page single-spaced letter written in Tlingit to anybody that you want to write it to. So what we're going to do is on our last day of class, which will be, let me set it up so we know.
What is single spaced? Is that just a space in between? Like
Yeah, it just means it's not double space.
Okay.
So our final for this class is on December 12th. So December 12th, we are not going to record the class. We are not going to post it. We might record it and stash it in a folder in case people want to see it again, but it's really only for the folks who are in this class. So think about who you want to write a letter to. So you're going to write a one-page letter entirely in Tlingit. Now, I have had students who write letters to siblings. I've had students who write letters to future generations, to the Tlingits of the future. I've had students who have written letters to relatives who are now ancestors. And so just think of who you would want, and you don't have to send it to anyone. All we're going to do is we're going to get together. We're going to say, let's get started. Everybody's going to read their letter out loud. And then we will wrap up and be done. Any questions about that?
Are we doing this completely on our own?
Well, you guys could work together if you want to. The question is, are we doing this on our own? You can reach out to me if you're not sure how to say something. You could do a lot of it by looking stuff up and just sort of grabbing it and piecing it together. Do not try to translate poetry, try to create some super powerful metaphors. Like, you could try a little bit, but don't try to, I've had students who said, like, I'll translate this Shakespeare sonnet in my letter. Like, don't do it. Just like save that for a much later date, because Tlingit is hard enough. We don't need to try and translate concepts into Tlingit. Just think of some things that focus on communication. What would you want to communicate to someone in Tlingit? This is your chance to do it. And to practice. We're just doing it for practice.
Does it have to be totally accurate?
No. But do your best. It's not graded. It's A+, just for doing it. And yeah, translate, like, it's so hard because some stuff in English, like, I used to read even like children's stories. I'd read them to my kids, and like sometimes I would just like, I'm not reading this book because it's all about the pattern of the words, right? It's just which is fine for teaching English, but sometimes, and yeah, and like rhyme schemes and stuff, they go right out the window. Sometimes translating lyrics is pretty fun.
Are we allowed to use really big font?
No, 12-point font. 12-point font. Write a one-page letter. Just like but if you were able to get sort of your audience, you wouldn't want to be like 4 sentences. Good night, right? And you're like, just do your best. Okay, well, enjoy the long weekend, folks. Stay warm and safe, and we'll see you on Tuesday. We'll get back into verbs and stuff. We'll do a little more of these puppet videos.
Renee, can I chat with you before you hang up, but maybe after you turn off the recording?